Out of all the werewolf franchises out there, one of the most interesting ones, if not the most popular, is the Howling franchise. It consists of 3 novels, 8 movies, and a comic book, with fans either defending it like their family's honor depended on it, or hating it so much they would swear vengeance for generations to come. Let's find out about the novels and movies today. The Howling franchise began with Gary Bradner's 1977 horror novel, The Howling, which tells the story of Karen Beatty. Karen was attacked and raped in her Los Angeles home, and it pushed her to suffer a miscarriage, which then led to a nervous breakdown. To help her nerves, her husband Roy decides to take her away from the city and to the village of Drago, a secluded, quiet California mountain village. The locals are friendly, and Karen feels at peace because of the quiet lifestyle. But soon she begins hearing a strange howling noise at night, coming from the woods near their new house. Karen complains about the noise to Roy, who thinks she is becoming more unstable. However, she is super sure that there is something in the woods. With the strain in their marriage deepening, Roy finds solace in an affair with a shopkeeper named Marcia Lura. One night, Roy is bitten by a werewolf and he becomes one himself. Karen discovers that the whole village is made of werewolves, and she seeks the help of Roy's best friend, Chris Halloran. Chris arrives armed with silver bullets and helps her escape the town of werewolves after setting fire to it. In 1979, Bradner wrote a sequel to it called The Howling 2, or The Return of the Howling. Set 3 years after the first novel, we see Karen settled with a new family in Seattle with her husband David Richter and stepson Joey. Karen is still traumatized though and takes regular therapy. When her family's housekeeper is brutally murdered, Karen realizes that her ex-husband Roy had survived and returned with his lover Marcia to take revenge on Karen. Karen had injured Marcia with a silver bullet during her escape. Karen sets out for Mexico and reconnects with Chris, much to the annoyance of his girlfriend Audrey, and the two plot and burn Marcia to death. The final book of the series, The Howling 3 Echoes, published in 1985, has nothing to do with Karen. It focuses on Malcolm, a survivor of the Drago fire, who is admitted to a hospital under the care of psychiatric specialist Dr. Holly Lang. Duroc, the leader of the Drago community, tells Malcolm about his werewolf heritage and welcomes him back to his people. Before he could make a decision, Malcolm was abducted by Wayne Pastory, a mad scientist who wants to know more about werewolves. Unable to withstand his cruel experiments, Malcolm runs off and joins the circus. While Holly tries to contact him there, Duroc kidnaps her to lure Malcolm. Duroc reveals he is Malcolm's father, and in the ensuing fight, both the werewolves kill each other while Holly flees safely. Even within the novel, there were a lot of discontinuities. For starters, Drago was set on fire accidentally by the first novel's characters, but in this film, it is said that the people of the neighboring village set fire deliberately to rid the area of werewolves. Unlike the first 2 novels, werewolves in this one could transform whenever they wanted to, and not have to wait for the sun to go down. The werewolf characterization was also different, as the first 2 novels mentioned them to look exactly like wolves, while here they stood 7 feet tall on their hind legs. Stephen Lane was a huge fan of Stephen King, and when he saw a blurb by King on The Howling, he decided to check it out. He was so impressed by the book that he decided to buy the rights to adapt it. Terrence H. Winkless and John Sayles got to work on the script, and Joe Dante directed the 1981 adaptation. Adaptation is a strong word though, as the film is very, very loosely based on the novel. Instead of Karen, the protagonist is Karen White, a Los Angeles TV news anchor who is used as bait by cops to draw out serial killer Eddie Quist. Quist takes her to a sleazy porn theater, but a cop intervenes just in time and shoots him. Just like Karen, Karen too is traumatized, and her therapist, Doc George Wagner, sends her to the colony, which replaces the village of Drago here. As you might have guessed, the colony is full of werewolves, and Karen's husband Bill is turned into a werewolf by Marcia Quist after he resisted her attempts at seducing him. Eddie too is revealed to be a member of the colony. The scared Karen calls her friend Terry to come rescue her, who in turn calls her boyfriend, Chris Halloran. For some reason, Chris is the one character who gets to keep his name. After Terry is killed by Eddie, Chris kills Eddie and escapes with Karen. Moments later, she lets out a special worldwide broadcast to warn everyone about werewolves, and to prove her point, turns into a werewolf on screen. Chris shoots her with a silver bullet, but the audience thinks that it's all just a big practical joke. Meanwhile, Marcia, who had escaped unscathed, enjoys a meal with a man at a bar. Though the novel was a straightforward horror novel, the filmmakers added a lot of changes to make it the funny, thrilling movie that we now know as a cult classic. Often considered one of the best werewolf movies ever made, the Howling's transformation scenes are legendary. Joe Dante rose to fame because of the film and would go on to direct Gremlins. The impressive film satirizes the media and has been credited with modernizing classic movie monsters. So it's no surprise they wanted to make another film. Producer Stephen Lane unfortunately could not enjoy the profits brought home by The Howling, as Avco Embassy Pictures had taken a financial hit and consumed much of the film's revenue. So he partnered up with Hemdale Film Corporation for the second film. Gary Brandner was brought in to write the script, though I don't know why, since the film did well without his input. Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, released in 1985, and was directed by Philippe Mora. The plot begins at Karen's funeral, where her brother Ben White meets Karen's colleague Jenny Templeton and Stefan Krosko, the mysterious man. Stefan proves to Jenny and Ben that Karen was a werewolf and convinces them to accompany him to Transylvania, where he intends to murder Striba, the immortal werewolf queen. In the Balkans, Stefan introduces them to locals who want to join their mission, as they had family or loved ones killed by Striba and her followers. Their mission is a success, though Stefan is killed as a casualty, and Ben returns to the United States with Jenny. The two start dating, although they are still scared by the thought of werewolf. The economical hardships of Hemdale translated into the film, known as Howling 2, Striba, Werewolf Bitch, as they could not afford good special effects. Many of them were added several months after filming had wrapped. Director Philippe Mora was inspired by new wave eroticism, but the overly sexual tone of the film seems out of place. The acting by relative newcomers Reb Brown and Annie McEnroe was reportedly so bad that off-set, Sir Christopher Lee acted as if he was wishing himself away from the set. Lee was so disappointed by the film that after he was cast in Gremlins 2: The New Batch, he personally apologized to Joe Dante. The movie was a great hit among people who want to watch movies that are so bad they're good. Philippe Mora continued to terrorize the Howling fans, not only as he directed but also wrote The Howling 3: The Marsupials, released in 1987. Screen credits claim that the film is based on the third Howling novel, Echoes, but viewers, let me assure you that aside from the name and the werewolves, the film has nothing to do with the book. For some reason, the werewolves have evolved in a way that the females have pouches like kangaroos. The film is about Jerboa, a werewolf who falls in love as a kid with Donnie Martin, a movie director. Meanwhile, Australian anthropologist Harry Beckmeyer tries in vain to get some werewolves to study, but his cruel techniques scare them all away. Mora wrote the film after he was disappointed with the sexualization of Howling 2. Bad, with a good serving of nonsense and weird, the marsupials also did not rise to meet the standards set by Dante. Producer Harry Allen Towers then approached Stephen Lane for a production deal as part of a tax shelter. This project probably had the least passion of all, as Towers did not see it as anything but a tax shelter. He did not provide any equipment to the crew he had previously promised, and he also disappeared when shooting began. Just from the story of the producer, you can guess how well the movie went. Howling 4, The Original Nightmare, was released in 1988 and was directed by John Huff. Strangely, this film is a much more faithful adaptation of Brander's 1977 novel. The film follows author Marie Adams suffering a nervous breakdown thanks to her overactive imagination, and her husband Richard taking her to the town of Drago upon the advice of her physician, Dr. Coombs. Richard has an affair with local artist Eleanor, and Marie is warned by her visions of the werewolves in town. In this adaptation, she doesn't wait for a man to rescue her, as she lures everyone in town into a church and sets it on fire. The plot is predictable, the characters generic, and everything about it seems ordinary. Did that stop the Howling sequels? You would hope, but nope. Clive Turner, who had worked on Howling 4, teamed up with Freddie Rowe to write a whodunit kind of werewolf mystery. Set in Budapest, 1989, Howling 5: The Rebirth starts with the reopening of a castle, where a couple had slaughtered the family living there in 1489. The mysterious Count of the castle welcomes a group containing the Professor, Dr. Catherine Peake, Peter, Susan, Gail Cameron, Mary Lou Summers, David Gillespie, Jonathan Hammett, and Ray Price. Hammett shares the legend of the region, stating that 1,000 years ago, Satan, who roamed the nights as a werewolf, terrorized the land with his pack of wolves. After the professor's mysterious death, the group must figure out what is happening. It is then revealed that the Count had lured them all in as they were descendants of the original family that lived in the castle and were all werewolves. David doesn't believe it, but he is killed along with every visitor by Mary Lou, who was a werewolf all along. There are barely any werewolves in the story, but the characters are interesting and were a refreshing addition to the franchise amidst really shitty sequels. Up next, director Pope Perello and screenwriter Kevin Rock brought us Howling 6: The Freaks. This has some similarities with the Echo novel, especially the circus part. We follow Ian Richards, a young drifter and a werewolf who is captured by R.B. Harker, the owner of the circus, who captures him and adds him to his freak show after convincing him that he killed his lover Elizabeth when he transformed into a wolf. Ian recognizes Harker's lies and discovers he is a vampire. He attacks and kills him before leaving, knowing that Elizabeth was not safe around him. The best thing I can say about this film is that it was not god-awful. Fans who were probably tired of the sequels actually liked this film for its performances and storyline. I still refuse to see it, and you can't convince me otherwise. Directed, produced, and written by Clive Turner, who might be the only man on Earth not exhausted by the Howling, Howling New Moon Rising was released in 1995. If you stuck by and watched every single movie till now, first of all, why? There are better movies out there. Second of all, this film is chock full of references to the other movies, but it has basically no plot. It just shows Mary Lou trying to frame an Australian drifter named Ted for her killings and ends up being murdered by a mob of townsfolk who'd had enough of the werewolf rampage. I can relate. Apart from a poor attempt to connect the previous films, there is not much happening in this flick. If you're screaming into the void, "How are we not done yet?" you could thank whatever god you worship as we finally have the last film, The Howling Reborn, released in 2011, directed and co-written by Joe Nimzicki. The film shows Will, an 18-year-old boy whose mother, Catherine, was killed by a werewolf. Catherine, however, was not dead, had turned into a werewolf, and was busy creating a werewolf army. One of the wolves attacked Will and converts him too. But Catherine, not knowing that, tries to convince him to turn into a werewolf. Will's crush, Eliana, who had been turned into a werewolf by Will after he accidentally injured her, saves him from Catherine, and the two create a video to warn the world about werewolves. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this film could have been worse. It has good performances and the young adult genre charm, but it would fit right into 2010's CW channel with all its melodrama. There might be hope after all, as a remake has been in the works since 2020 with Andy Muschietti as the director. Muschietti is great with it, so he might bring the X factor needed to revive the Howling franchise. While you wait for it, you can check out The Howling: Revenge of the Werewolf Queen, a comic released in 2017 that follows Chris Halloran after he is arrested for the murder of Karen White. If you ask me, the main reason for the downfall of the Howling franchise was the way it alienated its fans. There was next to no continuity in the sequels, with many movies not even having a proper Rotten Tomatoes score as they were so obscure. I stubbornly harbor hope, as I did like the first Howling, and 14 years later, we might have a redemption film after all. What do you think of the franchise, and why do you think it became so bad? Let us know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, smash that like button. We'll be back soon with more marvelous stuff, and until then, goodbye!